Jai Mahamaya Ki Jai. In our last discourse, we heard about the Divine Mother destroying Shumba, the great ego. And now we'll go on with chapter 32. Now King Janamejaya said, O best Amunis, the glory of Chandika has been fully described by you. By whom was she worshipped in the ancient times after the readings and hearing of her three glorious deeds, the killing of Madhu and Kataba, etc.? Who is it that derived the best effects by worshipping the Devi, the bestower of all desires? When and with whom was she pleased and then offered boons? O ocean of mercy, kindly narrate fully all these things to me. O Brahmana, describe to me also the rules how the meditation, worship, and homa of the Divine Mother should be conducted. O Rishis, Sutta said, Vedavyasa, the son of Satyavati, was very glad to hear these questions of King Janamejaya and began to describe how to worship the Divine Mother, the Mahamaya, the Devi Bhagavati. Vedavyasa said, O king, in days of war, in the Svaroksha Manamvatara, there was a king named Saratha, very liberal-minded and devoted to govern well his subjects. He was truthful, active, and energetic, and devoted to his guru. He always served the twice-born and never used to hold any sexual intercourse except with his legal wife. He was generous, not liking to quarrel with anybody, and expert in the science of archery. While he was thus governing his kingdom, the militias, the robbers, the hill tribes, turned out to be his enemies. They destroyed the city of Kola, became very haughty and turbulent, and desired to conquer the whole earth by their sheer force. Thus, accompanied by the great four-fold army, elephant chariots, cavalry, infantry, they came to conquer the dominion of King Saratha. A dreadful fight then ensued between the king and the dreadful robbers. O king, the robbers' forces were not at all numerous, whereas the armies of the king were large. Still, the robbers were lucky to win the battle. The king, defeated, fled to his own city, which was a strongly fortified place. The good king, wise in statesmanship, when he saw that his ministers had gone over to the enemy's party, became very anxious and thought whether it was advisable for him to wait for better opportunity, remaining within his own extensive city, well guarded by a strong wall and ditch, or would it be better to fight on? The king thought also that it would not be at all advisable to consult with his ministers, who were thus under the control of his enemies. What then would he do under these circumstances? Those vicious ministers could at any time deliver him to the hands of his enemies. What would then happen to him? Those men that are avarice can do anything in this world, therefore it would never be advisable to trust them. The people under the sway of greed commit injury to their fathers, mothers, brothers, friends, acquaintances, their gurus, and the adored brahmanas. When the ministers had joined with his enemies, they could well be classed with the vicious, no doubt in this. Never could they be trusted under the above circumstances. Thus pondering over the matter, the king became absent-minded, and finding no remedy, went out of the city alone, mounted on a horse. The intelligent king, helpless, entered into a dense forest and thought, where would he go now? Knowing then that there was at a distance of 3 yojanas from that place a hermitage of the great ascetic, the Sumiti Rishi, the king went there. A yojana is the distance measuring about 8 or 9 miles. O king, that hermitage was more beautiful than even the heavens. It was on the bank of a river. Various kinds of trees were there. It was frequented with wild animals having no enmity with each other. The whole place was echoed with the sound of cuckoos. The students were studying and reverberating the atmosphere with their Vedic chants. Hundreds of herds of deers were running there. Trees had grown there wildly at places, and their harvests were collected at places. Good flowery trees and other with delicious fruit were seen there. At places, fragrant smells of oblations of ghee, etc., were coming. All these were delighting to any man who went or stayed there. The king Saratha was very glad to see that ashram. He became fearless and wanted to stay there in the hermitage of that Brahmin. Fastening his horse at the trunk of a tree, the king approached humbly to the rishi and saw that the Muni was seated on a deer skin under the shade of a dense sala trees. He was peaceful, lean, and thin by tapasya. His stature was straight, and he was teaching his disciples and explaining to them the meaning of the Vedic sastras. He was void of anger, greed, etc., beyond all the dualities, without any jealousy, always devoted to the contemplation of his self, truthful and full of peace. Seeing him, the king was filled with tears and prostrated before him and fell like a stick before him. The Muni, seeing him thus, asked him to get up and inquired about his welfare. A disciple then, at the sign of the Guru, gave him a kusa asana to take a seat. The king got up and at his permission took his seat on the kusa asana. Then the Muni worshipped the king duly by offering him water to wash his feet and offerings of green grass and rice, etc. Then the Muni asked him, "Who are you? What for have you come here? Why are you so anxious? Tell frankly all these things that are not known yet to me. What do you want? Speak out your mind, even if that be impractical. I will no doubt try my best to accomplish your desired ends." The king said, "O Muni, I am the king Saratha, defeated by my enemy. I have left my kingdom, palace, and wife, and have come to your refuge. O Brahmana, I am ready to do whatever you order me. On this surface of the earth, there is no one but you who can protect me. Now I am very much terrified by my enemies. Therefore I have come to you, O Muni. You protect those who come to seek your refuge. I have now come here to seek your shelter. So save me from this danger." The Maharishi said, "O king, stay here without any fear. None of your enemies would be able to enter this hermitage by the power of tapasya, even if they were very powerful. O best of kings, you will not be allowed to kill any animals here. You will have to sustain yourself on this wild rice, roots, and fruits at the rules of the forest living permit." Thus, hearing these words, the king began to live there with all purity and without any fear on roots and fruits. Once the king, while taking rest under the shade of the tree, while thinking of various things, thought of his own house thus: "My enemies have no doubt acquired my kingdom, but they are vicious and wicked, shameless, and always addicted to sinful deeds. Certainly, they are tormenting my subjects. My elephants and horses are not regularly getting their food and have all become very lean and are suffering very much at the hands of my enemies." All the servants that were nourished by me before are now all suffering from troubles, having been subjected to my enemies. The wicked enemies are certainly squandering away my hoarded wealth to bad, immoral purposes in gambling, drinking, and reveling. Those robbers and my minister are always intent on vicious acts. They do not know who are the proper persons to be given charities, so they will no doubt exhaust away my coffers in doing sinful acts. While the king was thus meditating and thinking on this, seated at the root of the tree, there came out one man of the Vaisa caste, looking very distressed. The king saw and instantly bade him to take his seat beside him. Then the king asked the man, "O noble one, of what caste are you? Whence are you coming to this forest? What is your name? What for you look so pale and distressed? What calamity has befallen to you?" "O good one, two persons become friends whenever they speak 7 words amongst them. According to this rule, I am your friend. Tell me, therefore, truly, all of these things." The Vaisa businessman said, hearing these words from the king, took his seat and felt himself much relieved, and thinking that he has met with a saint, began to speak thus. "O my friend, I belong to the Vaisa caste. My name is Samadhi. I was rich. Never I had any jealousy toward anybody. Always I used to speak truth and was devoted to my religious acts. My wives and sons are very greedy and money and are irreligious. So they cut off all their affection and connection with me, very difficult to cut through, and have driven me out of the house on the pretext that I am very miserly. Thus forsaken by my relatives, I have now come to this forest. You look to be a fortunate man. Therefore, kindly, O dear one, give me now your introduction and oblige." The king said, "I am King Saratha. Lately I had defeat by the dacoits. Moreover, my ministers deceived me. Consequently, I am deprived of my kingdom and have now come here. O best of Vaisyas, fortunately you have come to me today as my friend. We too will repose here gladly in the beautiful forest covered with trees. O intelligent ones, now quit your sorrows, be calm and quiet, and rest with me at your leisure here happily." The businessman said, "O king, my friends and relatives must have been helpless, very sorrowful, and they are distressed at my absence. They must have been troubled very much by disease and misfortunes, no doubt, and have become very anxious. O king, I cannot remain quiet. My mind is being troubled with the thought how my wife and sons are spending their time now in pain or happiness. I am always thinking of when I would see again my sons, wives, relatives, friends, acquaintances, and my house. I cannot make myself be calm and quiet." The king said, "O intelligent one, what pleasure can you expect to see your wicked sons and treacherous relatives who have driven you out of your house? Even the enemies are far better provided they do good to us. What sorts of friends are they who impose on us afflictions and sorrows? Do you therefore make your mind calm and quiet and remain here in greatest peace and happiness." The businessman said, "O king, even those that are wicked and cruel cannot quit their relatives. Today my mind is greatly agitated with the thought of my relatives. I cannot remain quiet." The king said, "Truthfully, my mind, too, is incessantly troubled with the thoughts of my kingdom. Come, let both of us go to the Muni and ask him what is the medicine for the cure of these mental agonies." Thus making the determination, they went humbly to the Muni to ask him what were the cause of their sorrows. The king then went close to him and, bowing down before him, took his seat and began to ask calmly and quietly the Muni, who was sitting calm and serene. Here ends the 32nd chapter of the 5th book of King Saratha's going to the forest in the Mahapurana Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses, written by Maharishi Veda Vyasa. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Harakandeshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.